Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for your career and for willingness to hang in there and take up these responsibilities. As I see it, the world right now has 4 naval pinch points. You guys own 2 of them, Suez Canal and Panama Canal. Malaccan Strait, I would argue, is one, and now the South China Sea. I'm concerned about and let's talk about Suez just a minute. If you look at what Russia has done in Syria with Latakia and Tartus, and now what they're talking about in Berbera, down near Djibouti, where we have a base, and then now the Chinese have a base there, it's pretty obvious that Russia is increasing their operational tempo in Africa. General, tell me a little bit, because one of the things I worry about most, I've been listening to this stuff for a while here, and the thing that I see beginning to develop is the opportunity that Russia and China join together in an area where we're under-deployed, and it creates a real strategic challenge for us. Russia and China are members of the Shanghai Cooperative Organization, along with India and Pakistan, 4 nuclear powers. But in Africa is one of the few places where I can see, other than the Arctic, that they have the potential to really come together and create a real headache for us. Would you share what Russia is doing in your AOR and how we should be thinking about it as we look toward the NDAA this next year?
Yes, Senator. We provided some handouts there that
kind
of lay out graphically what Russia's doing. You can see it's quite a bit.
Yes, sir. Dramatically increased, wouldn't you say, over the last 3 years?
They have. So I think Russia's goals are predominantly for their benefit for resource extraction. They also want to position, particularly in northern Africa, particularly in Libya. They want to position on NATO's southern flank there. They also, I think, want to thwart what we're trying to do and present themselves as a great power alternative to the United States. What I see them doing is with China, though, we're not really seeing a great level of cooperation, with one recent exception. There was a exercise a couple of months ago in South Africa called Exercise Mosey, where the South Africans, the Russians, and Chinese navies conducted an exercise on the very southern tip of the continent. That's the first visible sign of cooperation that we've seen. We're not seeing that in a great measure, but they're all over the continent, and they're doing mostly resource extraction.
One of the things we don't talk about here is a follow-up real quick, and I need to get to Admiral Fowler about South America with a couple of questions, but what are our NATO allies doing in Africa to help us stand up to the requirements that we're trying to fulfill in your AOR?
Senator, as you're aware, NATO itself is not greatly active, but
I should have said the members of NATO.
Our NATO members of NATO are very involved. In fact, in West Africa, we're a tertiary supporter of the French, buttressed by several other European countries there. In East Africa, in Somalia, it's the European Union that's keeping the AMISOM African forces in the field by paying for their sustainment in the field. So the European partners are doing quite a bit. I believe there's room for them to do more, and I think our government has recently called on Europeans to do more. So has France, by the way.
I'm really concerned. You guys, your charts are great. $145 billion already invested in Africa, and a plan to get to $250 billion in South America within the next 5 years by China alone. I think these numbers are directionally correct. We've put in $8 billion of aid into something called Power Africa, and I'm making a point with this. And we attracted something like $46 billion of foreign direct investment to back that up. So we've employed over $50 billion with only 8 of our seed money in there. Leverage is a big part of this with our allies, and we've got to continue to do that. And you guys are right in the middle of that. Admiral, with regard to South America, 56 ports they've already invested in. I'm worried about 2 things right now directly. In Argentina, the Georgia National Guard is a partner down there, and you, in our meeting yesterday, talked about this a little bit. But tell us a little bit about the PLA, China's PLA, managing that space station in Argentina. And then secondarily, what is the up-tempo mean in the Panama Canal Zone that China has really undertaken just in the last, since you've taken over in that AOR?
as you state, beyond economic, China seeks to take their soft aims and turn them into hard power targets. And it's in space, it's in cyber, it's in port access, it's in access generally. They signed into the previous Panama administration some 40 agreements for access influence, including IT in Panama. Fortunately for us, the current team in Panama, the administration there has changed policy and is recognized the threat that could have on their sovereignty. We look up into the Caribbean, and one Caribbean nation, China, has built a road across the country, 1,200 acres of access granted for Chinese use. The equipment was brought in under under dubious circumstances. They parked it right next to the embassy, so we could be reminded of that. And now they get to collect the tolls for 50 years on that road. There's just 3 quick examples of what we see with Chinese influence. Pivot and look into Venezuela, where China, Russia, Cuba working alongside each other to block the forces and voices of democracy, particularly in cyber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.